Добрый день всем. Рад вас видеть. И прежде чем мы начнем с вами наше общение, мне хотелось бы у вас узнать, во-первых, видите ли вы и слышите ли нас хорошо, а во-вторых, на каком языке вы хотели бы, чтобы это наше общение сегодня состоялось. Вот сейчас мы попробуем там посмотреть. В чате у нас есть некое неудобство в том плане, что я не могу видеть ваши ответы напрямую. Здесь есть еще человек, который как бы читает эти сообщения ваши и мне их передает, написав на бумаге. Это некое неудобство, но тем не менее думаю, что мы с ним справимся. Вот. Ну, пока мы проходим процесс захода, приветствий и так далее, все-таки два вопроса остаются в силе. Слышите ли вы нас, видите ли вы нас хорошо? Это первый вопрос. Второй, на каком языке вы предпочитаете общаться? И предлагается вот следующая последовательность. Мы поговорим с вами о том, как можно оптимизировать подготовку к выполнению заданий Олимпиады. И потом в конце, я надеюсь, останется какое-то время. И, пожалуйста, готовьте, если у вас будут какие-то вопросы, вы их, пожалуйста, пишите. Мы на эти вопросы в конце по возможности постараемся ответить. Язык вопросов не важен. Пишите, на каком вы пишете. То есть, в принципе, это может быть русский, украинский, английский, без разницы абсолютно. Вот. Ну и сейчас, наверное, видят, слышат, да? Очень хорошо. Ну, по языку никто не отвечает, да? Ну, поскольку у нас все-таки это английский, давайте все-таки тогда будем говорить на английском, раз других предложений не поступало. So, okay. Nice to see you one more time. And let's start with reading comprehension. I'm just going to say at once that for those who took part in the same webinar last year, very little is changed because the material is practically the same. But still, I don't think that these people should leave because, as we all know, repetition is the mother of study. And as a lot of people say, the mother of knowledge. So let's start with it. For reading comprehension, we remember that in this section, we have either one or a few multiple choice tasks and a few texts. We all practically know by the 10th and 11th grade, we all practically know how to deal with those tasks. But I would like to offer something maybe a little bit different, but something that will definitely help you because that's proven by practice. And what's more important, it will help you save your time. And it's especially important for those who are going to take the independent external assessment next year or maybe in a year. What's that about? We're talking about multiple choice questions, multiple choice tasks, and this is the skill of scanning, which means that a reader is able to find concrete and specific information. It does not necessarily mean, or better to say, it does not mean at all that you need to read the whole text through, because your task is not like that. Your task is to answer the questions. And you will be given about 20 questions. It may be divided between a few texts. It may be put to the single text. It doesn't actually matter. Your task is not to read the text, not to demonstrate your knowledge of the text, your ability to understand the whole text. Your task is to answer the questions. The same thing is in the independent testing. The task is to answer the questions, to score the points by answering questions. This is it. And in this respect, when talking about multiple choice questions, first that we have to remember is that the questions will normally follow the sequence of events in the text. Normally, not necessarily, but normally, most often. The second one is that you have to not look at the text. That's stupid because the text may be rather big and you will come across, may come across a few unfamiliar words, expressions, or something that may get you confused, and you will just waste your time trying to figure out what's happening. This is why we first look at the question and we identify what the question is about. In other words, we identify the key idea of the question. Then we scan the text. Why the skill is called scanning? We scan the text and we find the place where that key idea is stated. And that probably will be the place where the correct answer might be. So we start reading the place that is around that key idea and figure out which of the statements that are offered to us as possible choices best fits the answer. Best is the best answer to the question. This is it. You do it once and you go on to the next question. If you do it fast enough, if you get the idea of the key words, key ideas in the sentences, you will be able to do the task fast enough to be able to get back if necessary. You will have enough time to get back and to revise and to check your answers and maybe to read the place that you do not probably understand very well or you are doubtful about, to read the place more carefully and to make sure that you have given the correct answer. It is not that important in the Olympics because you are given a set amount of time, say it's 45 minutes or 60 minutes for doing this particular task. And once you finish it earlier, no one will let you do something different. So you will just be idling. But at the independent testing, it counts. It matters because you are given 2 hours for doing all the written assignments. And there it is important if you can save some time for, say, writing or for doing use of English section. So by doing this, by learning how to do this here, you will probably be able and you will put a good basement for your success in the independent external testing. What do we have to pay special attention to when we are scanning through the text? It is something that goes beyond the line, and those are any proper nouns, that means names, the countries, the people's names, or the company names, whatever names, the capital letters, any sort of abbreviations, any figures given, that will be dates or maybe some numbers, some quantities, and so on, and the quotation marks, etc. Why is it important? Because very often the place you have to answer, you have to look for the answer, lies somewhere around them. So you can get oriented by these words, by these places that go beyond the line. Another skill that I would strongly recommend you to master is the skill of being able to find the correct answer indirectly. Not look for the direct answer, for the correct answer directly, but to try and eliminate the wrong answers and thus getting the correct answer. This skill is very important in the independent testing as well, and it works pretty well in the Olympics, in any multiple choice task actually, because out of the 4 choices given, normally 2 are definitely wrong. They are definitely not about the case. And you can easily omit them and then just have the 2 choices left, and it is very easy. It's much easier actually to choose between the 2 rather than between the 4. Some of the questions may have the words except, not, or the like, and they require a different strategy to working with them. It means that 3 out of the 4 options will be seen, will be met in the text. They exist in the text. So here first, what you have to do is to find the things that are in the text, and what is not will be your correct answer. Okay, I think you understand what I'm talking about. You are experienced people, and I'm just going to remind you that. If you have the questions that contain the words inferred or implied, like it can be inferred from the text that, or the author implies that, it means that there is no direct statement in the text, and you have to make your own conclusion on the basis of what you have read. It's a tough thing, and here I would like you to understand that you should not get oriented at your personal background knowledge, because it is not the case. Nobody is going to test your knowledge on history, mathematics, biology, and this stuff. No, that's not the point. The point is that what is checked is your ability to work with information. That is, to find the answers to the questions. And I can give you the example. For example, you read the sentence like that. Jim, an African American, went out of the room and got lost in the snow. And you will see the question. The snow was, and the 4 options: white, yellow, black, or orange. If you start using your personal background knowledge, and everybody knows that snow is normally white, you will give the sentence the question of the answer white, and you will be wrong, because the sentence implies that if Jim was African American, then he was black, and he could be lost only on the black background, so the snow could be black. It may sound weird, it may sound strange, but that's not the case, because it's not your knowledge that is tested, but your ability to process information. Please keep it in mind and find the answers directly in the text, not in your head, not in your knowledge. This is it. And the last thing about it is beware of catches, because normally the correct answer will never repeat exactly what is said or written in the text. It will always be a restatement or a synonym, but never the direct phrase from the text. If you see that, most probably that will be the wrong choice. Now let's try and see how we can cope with it. So you see, the text is a little, quite big, and if we start reading it first and then trying to look for the answers to the questions, we'll probably spend a lot of time. Do we need it? Probably not, because the experience says that once you have finished reading the text, you have forgotten what was at the beginning. And when you start reading the questions, you'll probably not understand where to get the answers. This is why the process of reading the whole text, to my mind, is absolutely unnecessary. So here you have a few questions to it, 5 actually. Yeah, and the first thing is to identify the key idea of the question. And here I would like to stop a little bit, because this is a very important skill, and it's not only about doing the Olympics tasks or doing the independent assessment tasks. No, that's not about it. That's about the life. because it is always very important to be able to identify the key idea of any place of the text, of any sentence, because normally what is important, you look through the sentence, you find the key words in it, you understand what's it about. And this should be done automatically, and it means that it should be practiced. It's not enough just to listen to me or some other speaker to read something. The theory is dead without practice. You may understand very well how to build a house, but without some experience in laying bricks, there'll be no house at all. You understand it, and I understand it. So have a look. And what is the key idea? So a number of competitions. That's the key idea. And we have to look through the paragraph. So we have to look through a text to scan. And here we have the key word that is repeated, the word competition in the first sentence, and the combination, how many competitions a person wins in the last sentence. And this is the place where we have to look for the answer. So we see that number of competition, how many? Okay, this is it. This is the place where the correct answer may be around. What is it then? So looking for the statement. What's that about? The best one. You see the word society and the personal value. And here's the answer. How society treats them, that will be the correct one. Next sentence. Not mentioned, remember that those tasks require finding first this what is in the text, and what is left is your correct answer. Here we have to look at the choices, of course, to find the ideas, to find the key ideas and look for them in the text. And here we see that all the sentences have the word competition. So the only thing that change are stressful, anxiety, anger, and discouraging. Here we have to look, and in the first sentence, we find the word anxious and anxiety. So this is it. It exists in the text. It's not the correct answer. Here, later, we see the word angry. Again, anger. Okay, no way. Then we have the word discouraged, and we see that the word discouraging is in the text. Discouraged is in the text. So 3 of them are in the text. The one that's left is stressful, no word about it, so that will be the correct answer. Quit working will be the key word, or you may add the word losers, because you will probably find look for the word losers and what's about them. And you see that in the text, here, you see, I'm just going to step a little bit aside. Here you see, I've made it a little bit easier for you because I've done the first part of the job for you. I found those sentences where the correct answer may be in the text myself. But this is something that you are supposed to work on your own, because this is the first step. First, you have the keyword, okay, and you find the word losers, and you look through the text, you scan through the text in search of this word, you find the word, it's probably the place where the correct answer will be. So, and what's happening? Stop trying. Well, isn't that it? Okay, so, and what is the correct answer then? Because the question was because, yeah? And they feel they won't win, or their chances are to win are minimal. Practically, there is statement. They do not believe that they will win. They believe their chances are very low. This is it. Again, We identify the keyword here, of course, is healthy, because the whole text is about competition, and we just skip the word because it will be all about it. And the keyword here is healthy. So we'll look for the word healthy in the text, or something that is a synonym of it, and we do find it. Here it is, healthy competition. And we have to find which of the answers, which of the options is actually true. And the correct answer, necessary to grow, necessary for living. This is it. And the last question for this text is research data. So this is a keyword, and something, we'll look for something that is similar or looks pretty much the same or carries the same idea. And we have a look for the word, we have a look and we find the word research, and we have the word result. So the word research indicates that this is where, in this place, somewhere around it, there will be the correct answer. And we see the word results, and we see that they indicate, those results indicate that and the correct answer. So the children sometimes need to fail, need to lose. And this is a part of a normal life. Okay? So let's go on. I'm sorry. So listening comprehension. Again, you're experienced guys, and you know that you will hear the text twice. This is practically the same thing that will happen with you during the independent assessment. You will also hear the text twice. With the only exception that during the independent assessment, you will hear the text twice at once. You will not be given time to do the task. Here you will be given some time to do the task. You are not allowed, remember that the first task out of the two will be deciding if the sentences are true or false according to what you hear in the text. And the second one will be multiple choice that we already know pretty well. You will not be allowed to make any notes while the text is being read out for you. This is true. But you will be allowed to look through the questions before the text is read out for you. And in this respect, I'm going to get back again to the idea of keywords in the sentences, the key ideas in the sentences. Because if you are able to identify the key things, the key ideas about the sentences, then it will be easier for you to understand what to listen for. Because you have a very concrete task. You have to decide if the sentence is true or false, if the information given in the sentence is true, it was in the text, or if it was not in the text. This is it, nothing else. You do not need to understand the whole text through. One more thing that I'm talking about this stuff. You have very particular tasks, and your task is to accomplish this particular task. And if you understand the whole text, or if you do not understand the whole text, nobody cares. If you complete the task, this is okay. This is it, nothing else. So, and if you have a skill of identifying the key ideas, you may just take a pencil, or during those few seconds or a minute or maybe two that you will be given time for looking through, you may easily spot those key ideas and follow the sentences and decide for yourself if the sentences are true or false when you're listening to them. Okay, so here you see the key, the sentences. There are 10 statements. And first, why is it important? Because if you have a look of the sentences or the questions beforehand, you will be able to just try to predict the topic of what's going on to be talked about. And here we see that the text is most probably about the segregation and the slavery. And there's something, and we see like if we don't forget about the things that go beyond the line, we see the numbers, 1952, we see the people like Martin Luther King and this stuff. So we probably understand what the text is going to be about. And we have to identify the ideas, the key ideas for us. The first person to define the segregation laws. Okay. The second one is the segregation continued after the abolition of slavery. The next one could not stay the same hotels as the whites, and the stuff. You see, so if of course those ideas can be cut down more, and it is much better if you practice doing this. You take a sentence and you try to cut down it so that the only idea is left, and the idea helps you understand what it was about. And you can you can check yourself by just doing this, cutting the sentence down to one idea, and then in a short while getting back to that idea and trying to restore the sentence, what the sentence was about, the exact sentence. That's a good sort of practice. And if you're able to do that, you will find no problem getting those ideas while listening or while reading. So here you see in green, you see the key ideas that were not cut down. They were long, actually, but still, this is the thing, or these are the things that you are supposed to listen for, to find the answers to the question. Okay? Here we have it. Please have a look, because I think that we are going to listen to it. All right. So here you have all the 10 sentences with the key ideas marked for you. And now we are going to listen to the text.
Slavery was officially abolished in the USA in 1865, but Black Americans continued to be treated as second-class citizens for almost 100 years. Segregation laws allowed for racial separation in schools, parks, playgrounds, restaurants, hotels, theaters, public transport, and so on. In 1952, segregation on interstate railways was abolished by the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1954, a similar judgment was passed concerning interstate buses. However, states in the Deep South continued their policy of transport segregation. This usually involved whites sitting in the front and blacks in the back. Blacks sitting nearest the front had to give up their seats to whites that were standing. Anyone breaking the law could be arrested and fined. On Thursday, December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks got on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and sat with 3 other blacks in the 5th row, the first row that blacks were allowed to occupy according to the transport segregation laws. The front rows filled up with whites, and a few stops later a white man got on and was left standing. The law stated that blacks and whites could not sit in the same row, so the driver asked the 4 black passengers seated in the 5th row to move and make way for the 1 white passenger. 3 of the passengers stood up, but Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat. When the driver saw her still sitting, he asked if she was going to stand up, and she answered negatively. Then the driver said, "Well, if you don't stand up, I'm going to call the police and have you arrested." And Rosa answered, "You may do that." The driver called the police. The police arrived, and Rosa was arrested. She was not the first black passenger to disobey a bus driver. Blacks had been arrested and even killed for disobeying drivers in the past, but Rosa was a well-known and respected figure in the black community. and her arrest sparked a mass boycott on the city buses that lasted over a year and culminated in a Supreme Court ruling which abolished segregation on public transport throughout the United States. Rosa Parks' brave decision marked the beginning of the American Civil Rights Movement. On the evening before she was due in court, a young priest, Dr. Martin Luther King, stood up in a meeting in Montgomery and called for the Black community to back Rosa Parks and fight for equal rights on the buses. He said, "Right here in Montgomery, when the history books are written in the future, somebody will have to say there lived a race of people who had the moral courage to stand up for their rights." Almost 10 years later, in 1964, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill, which granted equal rights to all American citizens regardless of the color of their skin. In the same year, Martin Luther King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in the civil rights movement.
Okay, as you can hear, the text is quite long and it's quite difficult to try and understand it word for word, and what's more, to memorize what was happening. So, but if you base on the tasks, on the sentences where you have noted the key ideas, it probably will be a little bit more simple for you. So let's have a look. The first person to define. Was she the first person to define? It is false because blacks disobeyed drivers before Rosa Parks did that. The second question is a little bit tricky because it is one of the series of something that can be inferred or implied, because you have to count. And the Black Americans were treated as second-class citizens for about 100 years, and there was the sentence, if you remember, that the abolition law was formally the black citizens had the same rights as the white citizens, started 1865, and it was about 1965, that's 100 years, and this is something that you have to count for yourself. So the same thing as doing inference or implications, and it is true. The sentence says, the text says about the racial separation, schools, and you see, so the sentence again is true because blacks could not stay in the same hotels as the whites. Playgrounds, and if you have a closer look at the previous sentence, you will see that the word playgrounds is there, so we can actually answer the two questions by listening to one sentence, because the same thing is mentioned. Well, here we probably, I'm not sure if most school children know the word boycott, because it's not that popular nowadays. So what boycott is massive refusal to use something or to do something or to communicate with somebody. So that means that the sentence was correct. Such sentences like sentence 6 are not very easy to do, because whatever refers to the dates is sometimes quite difficult to find and figure out, because normally a lot of people do not operate well with dates or numbers, and it is quite difficult for them. This is why questions like that should be paid special attention to, and more attention. And what was about 1954, 1952, if we remember about that, and if we look at the word that goes beyond the line, and it is 1952, and we listen carefully to what happened in 1952, there was the law that governed railway laws about the segregation on railroads, not on the buses. And this is why the sentence itself is not going to be correct, because the judgment about the buses was adopted in 1954, not in 1952. So here we have to decide if Dr. King was the key figure or if he was not, because this is the key idea. Why is it? Because he called the black community to back Rosa Parks. And without his participation, probably something would go or would have gone differently. Again, the numbers. And here we have to remember, because 1865 was mentioned in the text as the year of abolition of slavery. And here we may use our background knowledge, because this is something that we must know from the course of history. And still, the sentence is true, because almost or nearly 100 years after 1865, 1964. The next thing is about President Johnson, and again, well, you see the capital letters, that's the name, and it is something to be very attentive while listening for. What's it about? The American Civil Movement, was it under President Johnson or was it not? No, because it was the president was not Mr. Johnson at that moment. You remember, by the way, when President Johnson, this is something that we are supposed to remember about the history of the world, the history of the United States, the history of Britain, that President Johnson was definitely after that, because he replaced President Kennedy when he was assassinated. So it was practically about 10 years later. And the keyword, the Nobel Peace Prize, the year after the Civil Rights Bill, and we have already answered the question about the Civil Rights Bill, that it was 1964, and the sentence states that it was a year after, and that is not true. The text is not that easy, though, but that's the text that actually was used for the Olympics contest for the 10th or 11th grade, I'm not sure which one, but still it is the text that actually was used. So what we have to orient about is the text might be as difficult as this one. Still, however difficult it may be, we see that we still can find the answers if we identify the proper things at the proper time. The next is, as you see, the second part, you will be read the text out for the second time, and you will have to answer 10 multiple choice questions. And what is important, that while you're listening to the text for the first time, doing the true-false sentences, you still have some information in your head. Some information still gets in your head, and you can probably predict the answers to the multiple choice questions when you look through them You have a time, some chance to look through them. You will be given some time for doing this before the second listen. And again, you identify the key ideas to be able to understand what to listen for while listening for the second time and where to look for the answers. You remember the multiple choice tasks are all about where to find the right answer to the right question. This is it. This is processing information, nothing else. So the key word is blacks could not. What could they not do? The same bosses sitting or same row or standing near the whites. What does the text say?
The law stated that blacks and whites could not sit in the same row.
Okay, so the text says no sitting. And what's important? We do not know if they were allowed to stand near the whites or if they were not allowed to stand near the whites. We do not know. We do not know if they were allowed to sit in the presence or they were not allowed to sit in the presence. We do not know. The text does not say. Maybe that was all true, but we are working with the source of information. We're working on the text, and we are answering the question according to what we have heard. And this is why the same row is the correct answer. Again, here we can see, and we can easily predict the answer actually, because there are at least two sentences that are definitely wrong if we eliminate them. So definitely she was not a relative of Dr. King, and definitely there was nothing said about something else. And so which one you will guess? Okay.
But Rosa was a well-known and respected figure in the black community.
So here we see that practically the sentence is repeated. The correct sentence is repeated, with the only exception the word member is replaced with the word figure in the original text. This is why the answer is obvious. Okay. The key word is abolished, and it is about the time. You see, at the same time, before, the same year, with the bosses, and after. Probably after answering the first task, we will be able to get the correct answer, even without listening, so to predict. And then just while listening, we can just prove if we were right or change our opinion.
In 1952, segregation on interstate railways was abolished by the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1954, a similar judgment was passed concerning interstate buses.
Okay, so this is it, and we have to decide. And it was because it was done in 1952, and the buses were done in 1954, that it goes before. So the answer B is correct. Again, if we have a look at this question and the options, we can see that we have already heard this and we can already make up our mind about what was on. So what could be the correct answer? If I were a person to create the task, I would probably change a word to make it more difficult. I mean, the word of the correct answer, but still.
Anyone breaking the law could be arrested and fined.
Again, and pay some, I had to pay some fine. If I were a maker of this task, I would probably have to pay some money, something like that, to make it a little bit more difficult. But still, you see, it's obvious because some of the options definitely don't work out because option B does not work out, and option D does not work out because there was nothing about that in the text. So we have to actually choose between arrested and imprisoned, and arrested and paid some fine. Okay, this is it. So where could the black passages occupy the seats? This is the key idea. And just without listening, we can probably decide that sentence C does not work, okay, because if they could occupy any seats on the bus, there probably would be no segregation at all. And here we have just 3 options left. And here, this is something that we're listening, and we have to decide which of the answers is true.
And sat with 3 other blacks in the 5th row, the first row that blacks were allowed to occupy according to the transport segregation laws.
So, okay. Which of the 5th row, that was the first one that the blacks were allowed to occupy. Means that the first 4 rows were for the whites, and from the 5th on, they were for the blacks. And the correct answer, of course, there will be some rows because we do not know how many of them. But definitely they were in the back. And here we see the keyword, and the keyword is boycott, and probably we can give the answer to the question even without listening.
And her arrest sparked a mass boycott on the city buses that lasted over a year.
And we have the keyword here, and this is why the correct answer is obvious. Not that difficult, yeah. Again, the keyword is speech, King's Speech, and the variance. So what happened to that speech? Probably, again, we could decide that some of the options, or maybe one of the options, is definitely wrong. If you think, and you probably can guess what it was B, because it could not be broadcast over the country because it was in the support of the blacks, and due to the segregation practice, it definitely could not be broadcast all over the country. So this is why we have the 3 options left, and we can make our prediction because there is one sentence that definitely gives the idea, and I do hope that you get your point which of the sentences it is.
Dr. Martin Luther King stood up in a meeting in Montgomery and called for the black community to back Rosa Parks and fight for equal rights on the buses.
Okay, so he called for the black community to back, and in sentence C we see the word support, which is probably one of the synonyms of the word back in this meaning. So, and can you guess if we could find the answer without listening? Because the idea was of supporting, and the bus boycott was made by blacks, and this is it. So supporting Rosa Parks was the result of Martin Luther King's speech. So the Supreme Court it is the highest judicial institution in the United States, and the decision is absolutely obligatory to be fulfilled. So here we see a few options, and probably judging by what we have already heard, we can make the only choice here.
And culminated in a Supreme Court ruling which abolished segregation on public transport throughout the United States.
Okay, the only possible thing to choose here, of course, is abolishing segregation on public transport. So here we see the profession, and we can again we can eliminate the two wrong, or at least one wrong answer, and this is definitely the word answer D, a teacher. And if we do not know the word clergyman, but we do know the words doctor and lawyer, we have to choose between those. And here, if for those who do not know the meaning of the word clergyman, for them, it would be much easier to eliminate the wrong answers rather than try to figure out what clergyman is.
On the evening before she was due in court, a young priest, Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay, so there was the word priest, and definitely it's not a lawyer. So not a teacher, not a lawyer. The options are between doctor and clergyman. Okay, and if we see, and if we remember, that's our personal knowledge, background knowledge, that the title doctor is put in front of the name of a person who got his doctoral degree, that does not necessarily mean that he is a medical doctor, so works with medicine. So the only possible answer will be clergyman, yeah? A person who works in a church, who serves in a church. And the last question. Again, if we read the options carefully, we could easily spot which of the things is true.
Dr. Martin Luther King stood up in a meeting in Montgomery and called for the Black community to back Rosa Parks and fight for equal rights on the buses.
Okay, I think here it is obvious that the answer B, fight for their rights, that's obvious. What else could Dr. Martin Luther King call Black people for? Again, not necessary to even listen to the text. So what I mean, let me just try and repeat for you, because before we go on to the two different sections. There are two basic things that I would strongly recommend you to practice. First one is identifying key ideas in sentences. It's very important. And second thing, while doing the multiple choice tasks, please try and look for the correct answer, not by looking for it directly, but by eliminating the answers that don't fit and finding the correct answer there. It does not mean that you will need to use this technique all the time. But in my personal opinion, it's much better if you know two ways to solve the problem, because you are always able to choose between the two, which one fits you better at this particular moment, rather than you know only one, and if it doesn't work at a particular moment, then you get stuck. For me, I don't think it's appropriate. Please, next, let's go on to speaking and writing. There are two interrelated skills, and those are creative skills. So here you are supposed to create something. For this, there are a few things that you should remember. You do not need to try and prove yourself as an expert in the field of any particular science, because unfortunately, neither we nor you are not experts in the field, in any fields. This is why sentences like "every person knows," "all people believe" sound a little bit strange, because how do you know what people think, what they believe, and what they know? When you are given the topic, and when you choose the topic, better to say, it is your attitude to the problem and your opinion on the problem that will count. not what you know about the problem. You may know a lot about mathematics, physics, geometry, and history and the stuff. It doesn't matter, actually. You see a problem, and you are supposed to discuss your opinion about the problem, about some issue, if not a problem, but the issue, and present your ideas on that. And it's not necessary, if you're talking about environmental protection or the stuff, you just get a lot of information on biology or geography or whatsoever and tell it to the jury. It doesn't matter. Okay, it isn't important. It's what you think is what is important, not your knowledge about this. And for this, it is always better to use what you personally know, what you personally have experienced, or maybe what your relatives have experienced, that you know from your relatives, that you know from your parents or from a family, that you know from your friends, but something that you may say that I am somehow close to it. Not necessarily that I took part in it, but I'm close to it. I know it because people who were present there, people who took part in it told me that. This is it. Not because you know something that happened somewhere in, I say, Jamaica or somewhere else. How do you know that? What happened there and what the ideas were? Something, you use something that you directly may ground, not somebody else, but you directly, your personal experience. Now, back to some formal things about the message structure. So you all know that there are three parts in which a certain message consists of. And those are introduction, body, and conclusion. Since you are supposed to write an opinion essay in your writing paper and produce your opinion in the speaking section, they can be compared, and they have to consist of three parts. The introduction, where you introduce the topic to the reader or to the listener. The body, when you give your grounds for your ideas, give your ideas and give the grounds for your ideas, why you think so. And the conclusion, which does not necessarily boil down to, only to restating what you said in the previous parts, but also you have to suggest something new, suggest some new action, suggest some new plan or some new idea. For example, have a look. This is a possible topic for you to speak or to write about. And this is a topic to discuss. The red is the main idea which you have to discuss. And this is important because if you get the main idea, then you are discussing the right thing, because you see, there are books, and you may decide that you have to talk about how many books you have read in your life, how many books you have in your personal library, but without the direct correlation to the idea which you are supposed to discuss. Though there are normally three subtopics given to you both in your writing section or for your speaking task. And you see that in red there, you see those are the key ideas of those subtopics. And what it means that each of the subtopics should be covered in a specific, certain separate paragraph. And what about the paragraph? Again, reminding why the texts are divided into paragraphs, because one paragraph gives you one idea, and it completes what it's a cluster of information and opinions about one idea, and it consists of the topic sentence that gives you the idea, that presents the idea itself, and then you give the supports to the idea. It may be 2 or 3 supports, however many you wish, and then you give the summary statement in which you restate the idea that you give in the topic sentence. Like, for example, You see, this is the topic sentence of your would-be paragraph. And the key idea here is better sportsman. How do we develop our topic? How do we develop this idea? We answer the question why. And this is important because it is easy if you understand what to do. You get the idea and you ask the question, why this idea? Why better sportsman? And you may give 3 supports like faster, stronger, and more stamina. And then you say, first, boys are normally faster than girls. Next, boys are generally stronger. And finally, boys have more stamina. And you see that I started each of the sentences with the introductory linking word or transition word, as they are sometimes called. And then you make up a summary in which you restate the sentence, the key idea of your topic sentence. This is why coaches prefer boys for doing sports. Of course, this is very primitive. This is very simple. But I think it shows the structure. And it is important that you keep the structure because it is something that comes. It is something that is evaluated. It is something that is assessed. The structure should be kept. The topic sentence or the sentence that pairs the main idea of your paragraph, then the supports to the idea, and the summary where you sum up what you have said in the paragraph. What about the introduction paragraph? This is something that we start with. The main idea, the main thing for you to remember is that when you start speaking or when you start writing, you have to grab the reader's or the listener's attention somehow to get the person interested in what you're going to speak or write about. This is done with the help of certain hooks, attention-grabbing hooks. What can those be? For example, that can be a rhetoric question, the question that does not require an answer. Let's get back to the previous sentence about the boys who are better sportsmen, and we can just restate it. We can just ask a rhetoric question about that. Do you know that boys are better sportsmen than girls? The question does not require an answer, but it indicates the topic and it grabs my attention as a reader or a listener because I want to get the answer to the question, why are they better sportsmen? And I'm interested to hear your idea about that. Second, it can be a quotation. It is very good if you learn or if you know quotations by famous people that can be used in any situation, in a variety of situations. If it's not possible, if you don't know any quotation, then you may just invent yours. Just don't assign it to a specific person. You may create something like saying, boys are always better in sports. Someone said, okay, nobody is going to check if somebody really said that, but you give something like a quotation. Oh, of course, it is much better if you know real quotations of real people, but still invent one if you don't know. The same about the piece of statistics, which is also very good to start with. 90% of boys normally are better in sports than girls. Okay, nobody is going to check if it is 90% or 10%, but still you give the numbers. Again, I'm wondering why you think so. And I'm interested in listening to you, what you're going to say next, how you are going to explain it. It can be a joke, or it can be a combination of the above, all the above, or maybe you may take 2 or 3 points, or maybe all the 4. It doesn't matter. Then after that, after you have grabbed your readers or listeners' attention, you give your statement, what you're going to talk about and what you think about it. You preview it. And then you preview, you give a brief outline of the subtopics that you will discuss in the paragraph. This is it. This is your introduction paragraph. And now please have a look at the two paragraphs, the introductory paragraph and the concluding one. Don't you find they look pretty much the same? Yes, they do. And this is why experienced people who have taken part in preparing for the TOEFL test in the United States and Canada, they share this advice. When you start writing, you may start with writing the first and the last paragraphs of your essay because they are pretty much the same. Like parts of a bun in a hamburger, the upper bun and the lower bun. And they look pretty much the same. And then after you have done that, you can write what is in between those. And in any case, you will have your starting point and your finishing point, and you have some ideas in between. And you will have the complete essay, structurally complete, I mean. The same about speaking. Of course, you're not given enough time to prepare for speaking, but still you have 1 minute left. And once you have chosen your topic, you may just take a piece of paper and a pencil and jot down some brief ideas what you're going to talk about. And go on with them, because it is always better to orient at something, some procedure, some sequence, rather than talk just what comes to your head. Your talk should be organized. The body paragraphs look pretty much the same. And one more thing to remind you about is that they all should include transition or linking words. And you see that each of the sentences or the topic sentences in the paragraph, they start with transition. You probably know a lot of examples of transition words, and they're used both to start, to continue, or to finish, or to sum up, and they can be used to add something or to contradict something, like in addition, or however, what is more, or although. There are a lot of them, and what is important that you use them and you connect your paragraphs using those linking words. And it's not a bad idea to use linking words inside your paragraph when you introduce your or present your support. Like first, second, next. This is something very primitive, but something that everybody knows. First, second, next, or first, second, finally. Here is an example, and imagine that this is a task that you are given to write about. I deliberately replaced some real English words with the words that have no sense, that they do not exist in English. And there's the word Frepidone, Transtrake, Burley, Crepone, and Holdrons. They do not exist in the English language. So don't try to understand what it is. My idea is that even with those words that we do not understand, but we understand their functions, we understand what they are, what they mean in the sentence, we can build up a pretty nice part of an essay. So you see, you have the main topic, you have 3 subtopics, and you have to write about it. And first, you remember, when we introduce, we have to hook the attention, and it can be done with a rhetoric question. Because remember, the topic is about the importance of Frepidone for a person. This is why this particular rhetoric is not that bad, because it's rhetoric. It does not require an immediate answer from the listener or a reader, but it makes me as a reader think about it, if I have or if I haven't, and this is why I'm interested in what you're gonna continue with. Then there may be a quotation. You may start with it, or you may keep going with it. And we do not know if there is a person named Ginger Bukaweshi. Nobody is going to check it, actually. And the next one possible is about statistics. They say, okay, nobody cares if there are really 80% or if there are less than 80%. Nobody cares. But the idea is that each of those things, they provoke my interest of what you are going to talk about later. This is it. It's the goal of this is to hook the attention, to grab the attention. You've done it. The last one is a joke. Okay. And as you remember, we can use either one of those, or you can use all of the four. Okay, in any combination. Then we have to present our idea, what we're going to talk about, preview the idea. Yeah, humans are born to be frapped. And you remember, the idea is the importance of frapped donor for people. And we preview the subtopics. And at the end, the last sentence, you see, is the transition to the body, because I state my personal opinion, I believe, and it means that I'm going to go on to the body, to the part where I'm going to describe the topic in detail. Let's see how we can build the paragraph, the body paragraph number one. So the topic sentence, I really don't think so, is my key idea. And I build up my sentence around this idea, actually. And you remember, we have to answer the question, why I don't think so. And this is why here comes our first support. And I started, you see, just like the first sentence, which is started with the transition to start with. I start the second one with, as a matter of fact, which is introduction, which is transition word. And I give some ideas about it. And I mention Burley, and which is mentioned in the task. And here is support 2. And I again start with a transition in addition, because I continue, I keep going. And you remember we're talking about Burley. So, and I keep going with Burley in support 2. And then I give support 3 and summary. Yeah. And you see there's some support is in green and the summary is in red. And if you see, the summary is somehow restating the idea given in the topic sentence. I don't think so, so I don't agree, and I feel sorry. This is it. And you may build your speech like that, actually. A few speaking tips. Well, okay, before we start with speaking tips, the chat room brought another question about frapped donor. I'm just going to remind you, I have taken the task from the original Olympics. That was the task that students, the contestants, who took part in the Olympics, one of the years, previous years, they chose it and wrote about it. I replaced the original English words. There is no word like frapped donor and Burley and Transtrake in the English language. Those are imaginary words. But what my goal was, it was to show you that we can build up a nice paragraph, or even a couple of paragraphs, or even the whole essay, if it were our goal. Even without even using the things that probably we don't know what they are. Like the word frapped donor. We do not know what it is, but we can build an essay around it. Just using the structure of an essay. That was not about the meaning, that was about the structure. And that was, I was trying to bring you, that we have to use a specific structure of an essay. And when we do use it, we do not care if this is something that we know, like money or happiness, which was in the original task, if I'm not sure, if I'm not mistaken, like happiness, people cannot live without happiness. Or Frepidone, which we do not understand what it is. We can build up an essay around Frepidone. And to finish with a few speaking tips for you. And while this is being done, please, if you have any questions, make sure that you print them in the chat room, because we'll probably have about 5 minutes to answer any questions if there are some. So first of all, when you speak, be social. It means that you are talking to people. You're talking with people. So when you're sitting in front of the jury and there are 4 or 5 people listening to you, it means that they are people. They are not walls. They are not desks. And when you speak, speak so that the people could understand that you speak with them, not at them. Because it is a very sad feeling, a very sad impression if you listen to a person and you understand. If you leave, the person will still keep going, keep talking. And for the person, it doesn't actually matter if there is a person in front of him or her, or if there is a wall in front of him or her. So this is what I mean, talking at people. Do not do that. Talk with people. Use your body language. Use your facial expressions. Make it interactive. The talk should be organized. I'm not going to repeat myself because we've already spoken about it. So structure your talk, structure your story, make a catch, grab your attention, and then build up your story in an appropriate way. Organize your ideas in the way. So the key idea, the support to the idea, then another key idea, support to the key idea, and then please finish with something that you suggest. The next thing is explains actually why you are given, normally given, 3 subtopics for writing, 3 subtopics for speaking, because people normally remember not more than 3 things from what has been told them. And in this respect, you should remember that these are 3 things. You should stick to 3 ideas that you're going to cover, and you should repeat those 3 ideas whenever possible, so that those 3 ideas went on through all your story. The appropriate language. It is very important, because when you start talking or writing like an encyclopedia, believe me, it is not interesting to read an encyclopedia article, or to what's more, to listen to an encyclopedia article. You should be emotional. First of all, you should use, of course, you should use linking and transition words that give me understanding of the flow of your speech, where you start, where you continue, where you finish. Next, make your speech emotional. So you are supposed, the English language is rich in a variety of synonyms, is rich in a variety of phrasals, is rich in a variety of idioms. And this is what you have to use if you want to sound emotional, because all those are not about information, they are about emotion. Phrasal verbs, idioms, comparisons, metaphors, whatever. So you should use all of those to make your speech more alive. So be as figurative as possible, because it is something, you're talking about your personal opinion. You may not talk about your personal opinion talking encyclopedia-wise. You agree with me? It's impossible, because encyclopedias give information. Reference books give information. They are unemotional completely. They must be unemotional. You give your opinion, you must be emotional, because it is your opinion, and you have to defend your opinion, to prove your opinion. So be as emotional as figurative as possible. Please try and avoid using unnecessary vocabulary such as basically, well, okay, you just say nothing. If you want to make up your mind, to grab your thoughts, to collect your thoughts, then just better be silent for a moment. It's okay than to say all those stuff without stopping every other sentence. And the last rule for that, it's called the 10-second rule. It's not necessarily 10 seconds, maybe 5 seconds or 15 seconds. It doesn't actually matter. So it's just some time that you need to collect your thoughts before you actually start talking. It helps you organize, and it helps the audience to understand that you are going to start. And you are more confident, and they are more attentive. So this is probably it for today. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them, because we have about 5 minutes to answer. So if there are any questions, you're welcome. One thing that I would like to say one more time is that first, try finding key words, key ideas in wherever possible. Try to take a sentence, cut it down to the idea, to the very idea of the sentence, and then after a while, get back to that idea and try to restore the sentence. And then compare it with the original one. That's not a bad practice, and that develops both your thinking and your language. And second is try to implement and use the elimination technique when you do the multiple choice tasks or any other sort of task, because it does not necessarily mean that you can use the technique only with multiple choice. No, but the multiple choice questions are the easiest here to practice with. Just eliminating the wrong answers to get the right one instead of looking for the correct one directly. And the main thing is to practice. Instead of sitting and saying to yourself, okay, I understand everything. That was useful or useless, okay, but I get some information and I know what it is about. Okay, it's nothing without practice. You should practice, you should feel how it works, because again, if you know how to lay bricks, it does not mean that you are a good bricklayer. You are able to build a house so that it doesn't fall. All right, so if there are any questions, no questions, then I can say thank you for your attention. It was nice talking to you. And I do hope that you will be well and you will do well during the Olympics. And I wish you all success. Thank you.